Welcome back, everybody, to the second half. Pressure orders. Glad you all could be here. 2 more hours to go. Thank you all. Been a good time. We made it to Aldemina, which is great. And we're gonna see if the crew gets into any trouble on the surface. Hello.
Hi, girl.
Fantastic. So, we'll just simply jump into it here.
Good to hear.
Dash and Mouse and Zian, you all are out kind of exploring, and I assume it's kind of like that thing where you just kind of walk around, see what's there, see what's, you know, where the busy spots are, what's been going on.
I'm gonna follow the mountain trail.
Yeah, right. So like there's a couple of things that I've kind of alluded to. So you guys can certainly like go make the hike up the mountain. That's totally a thing that you can do.
I want to check out the geothermal facility.
Yeah, absolutely. Go check out the power plants and stuff. That's also totally a thing that you can do.
I'm guessing there's nothing in. Is there anything in the sense of, you know, air-based tech around here?
Yeah. So this island is a little too small to house its own starport. It's not quite large enough to be like a landing zone, which may or may not be the reason why you had to like take a boat over here, right? Like that's kind of the whole purpose. Besides the fact that you have pretty good idea that whatever you're going to be bringing back is probably not on the up and up with the local authorities. So unfortunately here there's not a whole lot of that. But I think that as you guys are walking around, and the geothermal plants are also located kind of like up the mountain a little bit, kind of out of the immediate like harbor area. So you all are kind of heading in the same direction. As you're kind of walking through, I think that you see that there is there's a bar or diner or something that's kind of open air, where like, you know, essentially you just like walk. It's a walk-up bar where you just kind of like walk right up to it. And you can see there's a bunch of different people that are there. They're standing room only. All the seats at the bar are full. There's like 2 more rows of people behind them, and it's like the most people that you've seen kind of collected in one area, and they're all like watching this big hollow screen that's behind the bar. And you can see that there's as I described this planet last time, there's a lot of droid activity. People use droids for a lot of things on this particular planet. So there's a droid bartender that's going around and serving people and pouring drinks, and, you know, accepting credit chips and all that kind of stuff. And it's kind of on rails attached to the bar, so it slides back and forth, grabs bottles, pours it in, hands the drink out, etc., etc. And you can see very immediately that they are watching. They're watching pod racing, of course. Because what else would you do? Yeah. What else would you do with your time? So they're watching pod racing, and you can tell as well that it appears to be local. The course that appears to be going on is across water. So there's not like a whole lot of physical obstacles. But they have, like, if you've ever seen like the plane racing, where they have like those big cone markers to fly in and out and around. That's kind of what the pod racers are like, cruising around, and you can hear some of them cheering and some of them groaning because they probably have credits on the races. And you can see as well that wherever they're racing is also kind of an enclosed area, and it appears that they've purposely dumped like hungry fish and animals into this enclosed area that try, like, occasionally you'll see like one leap out of the water and try and get like bait fish that have also been thrown in there. So the obstacles are kind of dynamic in this particular pod race. It's actually really, really cool to watch if you stay there for any extended period of time. So it's like an interesting note on your way up the mountain. And as you begin to ascend higher and higher, you get more and more vision that like extends out as you're kind of looking over the top of buildings now. That extends out on the horizon. You can see, you know, there's clearly there's another landmass that's kind of to the northwest, pretty far off, but you can see just kind of like the little pinpricks of like buildings that have been built up over there. And eventually you reach an area that kind of the buildings thin out a little bit from the like warehouse, residential, factory, and it gets more into kind of industrial, these geothermal power plants, which, you know, as we know, the generators for these things are the huge buildings that house these massive generators. And obviously what happens with the geothermal is they dig like way down into the ground and use the natural kind of power generated by, you know, lava flows and the planet itself to run these giant engines that then push power to everywhere else. And I think that in a place like this, they're like, when you said you wanted to check these out, Mouse, I guess you should ask, to what extent, like, do you want to go walk around inside one of them just to see how they work? Do you want to just like look at them and see if you can like garner operations? How do you want to observe this interesting thing that you found?
I guess I kind of want to see how it works, I guess.
Okay.
Interested on a medical sort of level.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that as you're kind of walking by, there's obviously like there's a fence up, like a chain link fence that kind of surrounds the property, just so, you know, civilians don't go in and get themselves hurt, right? Everything's a liability. But you get to an area that looks like a kind of like a front-facing building, where the chain fence opens up and you can like walk right up to it. And they probably have, because this is like the mountain walk, right? This is like the only touristy thing that they have. They probably have like a bunch of like kind of layman's terms descriptions on these big like hollow boards of how everything works, right? Like it's probably a bit of advertisement as well, where it's like, you know, we power, you know, 32% of the planet from this island alone, etc., etc. And they kind of give you the layman's terms of like, you know, how when they dig in, how dynamic it has to be, like the different core drills that they have to do change on like a monthly basis depending on, you know, where the flows of the geothermal power are coming from.
Yeah.
Essentially uses a lot of like heat capture as well to power a lot of things. So
I mean, I'm not trying to do anything specifically. Like, I guess I was just looking around.
Yeah, and I think that you, being a technologically advanced person, can tell that these are pretty marvelous works of technology. If everything they're saying is true, right? Like if all this kind of propaganda is true, they're harnessing at a pretty efficient rate for what they're doing on the planet, and that's super cool. Like it's super interesting to know that Druckenwell has advanced this far, right? They're not at the weather generator, which obviously is a thing in Star Wars, right? Like you can generate weather. They're not quite at that level, but these geothermal power plants are certainly some of the more advanced that you would see in the civilized galaxy.
Yeah, I'm just super interested in it. Like Mouse is just like, she can't really touch it, but you know.
Yeah. So we get Mouse is having a nerdgasm over like all the different things and specs
pacing
and
back and forth along the fence line.
Yeah.
Looking at specific things.
Yeah. What about Dash and Zien during that period of time? Are you just content to like let Mouse have her fun?
Yes.
I'll probably have walked ahead. Like
okay.
Just
I'd be behind Cyan.
Okay. So you all like go to walk ahead, and perhaps Mouse, you know, after a few minutes you get done kind of perusing through all the things, and you know you're kind of gazing through the fence and looking and seeing how things operate, and you know there's probably like it probably has like a little timer where it says, you know, like we'll be venting excess, you know, at these times throughout the day, and like you're really close to one of those times, so you know you look at your
really want to see it,
your watch, right, and then like this big vent opens up from one of the generators and just like releases this bout of heat into the air where you can like, it's so hot you can like physically see the waves rolling off of it. And there's a couple of other people that have probably like gathered around and are like watch it as well. And then once it finishes, the vent kind of closes back up, right? And you turn around and you see Zien like maybe, you know, way up the hill somewhere with Dash kind of following in tow. Perhaps then you hurry to go catch up with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I go ahead and catch up with them. Yeah.
Yeah. And so as you do that, you continue your climb, and eventually you get to a point where the civilization kind of ends at a certain point where you're basically just like kind of ascending the side of a mountain with like these stairs and walkways that kind of zigzag up. Not because there's any like any significant reason, except for the fact that it's just really hard to build up here. Like, it's almost a steep straight up. You can tell that they've had to like cut out of the mountain to make these little pathways. But eventually I think the three of you get to a platform that kind of looks out over this big crater, right? You know, it's at the top of a volcano, so there's this big crater-like area, and down below you can see where it's not bubbling magma, but it's kind of that like just recently cooling magma, where like you can see the lines of red where it's like breaking apart and moving and being pushed out, kind of like forming around.
Still magma, or
yeah, oh no, it's still magma, but it's not like bubbling, bursting red magma,
not
right?
still magma, still in the sense of like
yes, correct.
that still magma.
I see what you mean now. Yes. And it kind of creates this weird like plateau layer that almost looks like you could like walk on it, but you know that it wouldn't be like firm enough to hold your weight. And
if you sit down, you're gonna melt.
Yeah, you lose a foot at the very least. And you can see like the billowing smoke that kind of, you know, comes out of this crater comes from, there appear to be a variety of different buildings that are kind of suspended above the magma, and you can see the shielding on them, right? Like the heat shielding on them to prevent them from burning up. But these buildings appear to be like dumping excess excess resources and stuff. You know, they're essentially using the volcano as an incinerator.
Right.
And so that's kind of where like the smoke is billowing up from. However, one thing about this planet that I remind everybody about is when building it, they didn't want to run into the problems with like that Coruscant has, and even Corellia to a degree, or any like the big city planets. They didn't want to pollute everything too much. So they use a lot of natural resources in just everything that they build. So almost everything that the people build here is probably at least biodegradable to a certain degree. So even though they're incinerating and like putting stuff into the air, a lot of it is still very, very clean in that regard, because they were very mindful when they were developing this planet to make everything very
not
clean.
Used to this kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that because you weren't here last week when I described it, but it was weird walking into a city and then breathing fresh air for everybody. Like the air was very crisp and clean when you exited into a metropolis that you would be used to, like in Coruscant, right? But in Coruscant, it's like hard to breathe because it's difficult to even get clean air. But here on this planet, it's the almost exact opposite. It's still that big, you know, stacking skyscrapers and like under cities and stuff on the larger parts. But the air is very clean and filtered and quite pleasant, in fact. So, Zian, you witness all this. It is a mighty force of nature that is being dealt with here. And it appears to be, you know, like, here's the thing. Volcanoes are not really controllable, right? Like, there's not... You're not going to control the force of nature like this. Now, in Star Wars, they do have a lot of ability to do a lot of different things, but there's still precautions that need to be taken.
Right.
So I think you see like the remnants of that, right? Like the platform that you're on is actually like enclosed. Like once you get to the top of like the staircase and platform, you actually enter into an enclosed area, and you can tell when you enter in, like there's heat shielding like all around it. And there's probably some details like lining the walls on different holographics and stuff that detail, like, you know, the last eruption took place, you know, at, you know, this many years ago at this time. Damage was minimal due to the fact that we have this technology now that can help us prevent damage from eruptions. It probably talks about how like the surveyors of the volcano itself are constantly performing tests and scientific research to determine when and where the next eruption will happen, so that you can adequately prepare for it, etc., etc. And it probably says as well, that this is the second largest volcano on the planet. There is one that is larger, but they probably say that it is dormant. The one that is larger is dormant.
Okay.
So it's much less kind of developed than this one is, because this one they're using the resources from it being an active volcano to do things with.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's essentially the volcano that you are currently at Aldemina, which I'm going to change since I gave it a name. Let me. Oops, there we go. So what is your intent here? Are you just interested in the happenings of this place?
Yeah. I think it's more of an excuse to try and get away from people.
Sure.
Trying to get away from like the artificialness of the boat and the cities, and try and kind of get back to nature a little bit, because
yeah,
he's at most comfort when he's kind of in that more rural environment.
Yeah, and I definitely think that even though it is like developed, right? Like there's these suspended buildings above it, and you're inside of this, temperature controlled area, you can still kind of feel like that power coming from the volcano itself, right? The natural order of things. So perhaps it does do some to alleviate your these feelings of dread and fear and anger that you've been experiencing.
Yeah.
But that's up to you, whether how far that actually goes.
I'm sure it does a bit. There's always a little bit still kind of there. But
always. Never
helps.
completely go away. Cool. Awesome. So again, we sit here for a little bit, and perhaps the same kind of scene happens where Zian is walking around. I mean, do you meditate? Like, do you just like start meditating at the top of this volcano? Is that a thing that you do?
To a degree, probably not like the full on levitating lotus kind of thing.
Sure.
But wherever I can get like closest away from the technology while still being safe and whatnot, and just kind of do a light meditation, I guess.
Yeah, obviously the whole front of this like observatory is just like all glass, right? So like
Yeah.
it's almost as if you're standing out over the volcano itself. So yeah, you go up close to the glass, and you perhaps sit down just to take the weight off your legs and close your eyes and begin meditating a bit. So for Dash and Mouse, you guys are up here, and I think that Mouse, there's definitely some interesting things here too, right? For you as far as a technophile goes. And how they're really utilizing this natural resource to its extreme benefit, right? Like, not only are they harnessing the power that it has below the surface, but they're also using it as a cheap, efficient way to deal with garbage and waste, right? They're using it to kind of cleanse all of that. And it's also pretty cool from a scientific aspect that that they have so much research also going into this. So there you go. For you, Dash, you kind of been on this journey, just with them, just kind of to have something to do. And I think that as you're I don't know if you're bored, or perhaps you're interested in some of these things. But as you're kind of like waiting there, I think you see that there's like a small landing pad that is kind of in the middle of these suspended buildings, and you can see that there are waste trucks that waste ships that come in. They'll land. They'll offload like a cargo container, and then they'll take off again. But why don't you roll me a? I'm gonna have you roll me an average perception check.
Okay.
See something. Whenever you're ready, go ahead and roll.
Let's just hope my perception is good enough.
I believe.
So if I sound out of it, I've been up for about like 2 days now, due to like uni coursework. After this, I'm probably gonna sleep or something. Okay, I'm good.
Yeah, cool. So take a strain there for Dash. But your success here shows you that in between some of these deliveries that happen, there is another ship that comes to the area, and I think that the reason it kind of piques your interest is as you're up there, there's a ship that lands. It looks like a shuttle, like a cargo shuttle of some sort. It's still small. It's smaller than your ship. It lands and it drops off a very similar cargo container to what you've been seeing come in, and one of the waste speeders that comes by, it actually picks up a cargo container and leaves with it, that same one. Whereas in every other instance since you've been watching this happen, they've been coming, dropping off cargo containers and leaving empty. So this is like the one time that it leaves with a cargo container on it, and as it does, you see it flies back down to the city, kind of in the same route that you would assume. That you witness all of the other ships taking, and then very shortly afterwards the shuttle takes off again. But it is like, it's an oddity, it's an anomaly that piques your interest.
So we kind of like just like let's out just like if anyone would maybe hear it from themselves, they would be like, something's fishy here. So I don't know if a Cyan or a Mouse notices self-hum or just like hum out loud. Maybe in a way to catch their attention.
Yeah. So Dash does the like that's interesting noise.
I guess Mouse will get curious.
Hey,
Kind of.
I don't know if it's normal for this place, but I saw a pattern, and there was one specific ship that kind of like did the thing where normally they don't do it. Like normal, as in normally they leave the car, but one specific ship that was kind of different, a supply shuttle, kind of like small like ours, and for some reason, out of all of them, what did you say, a junk speeder or what?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of waste ships that are all basically like just cargo, like literally they're just like speeders that have claws that carry waste cargo containers, right? Like underneath of them. And there's like, it's basically like a one-man cockpit, and then there's claws to grip onto the cargo container, and that's it. Like, it's basically it, all of it. And all the time they show up, they drop their cargo container off, they leave. They show up, they drop their cargo container off, they leave. They show up, they drop their cargo container off, they leave. However, one ship, one of those waste ships, instead of showing up, dropping off a cargo container and leaving, it showed up, dropped the cargo container off, picked up another one, and then left. And so that's why
basically what Dash describes.
Right. So that's why there was like an anomaly there. It was very strange because, like, why are you taking waste back into the city? Is like the weird part that happens here.
I don't know what to say to that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. Do you know anything back from your time about this? Is this some shady stuff? Dash kind of like is trying to grasp at straws because he wouldn't know why someone would take the trash back to the city, because he has heard of people just like smuggling stuff. So maybe he would assume, like, is there something fishy going on here?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know out of character or in character. I don't know. Oh, is there a check I could do?
I mean, I think Skullduggery or like Underworld would be two things.
Yeah, like lore.
Streetwise, not Skullduggery.
Yeah, I think it's
Streetwise,
either
right.
Streetwise or Lore Underworld here would be appropriate if you had either of those and wanted to roll them.
Yeah, Skullduggery is different, sorry.
I mean, I can give it a try.
Yeah, sure. Whichever one you want to roll, the roll's already set up. It's an average check for you.
Yeah, these are any of my strong suit.
I guess you know something.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, so take a strain there, Mouse. But I think that immediately you recognize this. You probably have this knowledge for whatever reason from your times on the salvage ship, where occasionally there would be deliveries that you would make to like a scrap facility that instead of going through the scrapper and getting paid for it, somebody else would come pick it up. A lot of times you weren't really probably aware of what was going on, but I think that maybe if you ever inspected it or figured out what was going on, you realize that not all the time were you dropping off just normal scrap, right? Not all the time was it ever just normal stuff. Sometimes there might have been something in there that somebody wanted, and when somebody wanted it, you had to make a show of doing what you were supposed to be doing, but allowing somebody else to do what they wanted to do. So you would definitely equate this to probably some sort of shady business. Like somebody brings a bunch of garbage up to the garbage facility, and then instead of throwing it in the garbage facility, somebody else takes it. And there's probably something in that garbage they wanted, right? Like that, I think, is the logical conclusion here.
I guess I would relay, like, sometimes when, like, we were doing salvaging, there were, like, ships that we weren't supposed to be salvaging, I think, and sometimes we would hide pieces of the salvage in the other salvage. Like, kind of like to mask it a little bit, I guess.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I mean, it's our place, but it's just like, guess no place is clean, right?
I mean, it's just that one ship, I guess.
I mean, who knows? With our luck, we'd probably be tangled up in this mess if we're not careful. Dash says jokingly about their previous adventures.
If I remember correctly, it was you who got us tangled up in the mess before.
Well, the thing is, due to your goodwill and humility, you helped me out. So yeah, there's also that factor. Kind of like saying, like, I'm not only to blame. What are you talking about? I didn't force you at gunpoint. But yeah.
Yeah, so we see that oddity occur, and we see the group of you perhaps. Zian, you finish your brief meditation.
See kind of what they're going on about.
Yeah, and I think that like Mouse is like, maybe it's something shady, and Dash is like, that was a really weird thing. But at the end of the day, like, how do you affect that, right? Like, okay, we know that happened. Great. So I think that as the group of you, your hour is coming to a close, and it's time to descend again back to the ship. We see Jax and Kin. You guys are waiting with the captain down by the docks. And I think that the captain is probably like connected to the local net and has that same pod racing race up. And you guys are kind of watching it out on the deck of the ship. He's probably got like a portable holo generator that's kind of like wired into the bridge. So you can see you see the race going on, and perhaps you all are just kind of sitting there enjoying it, but keeping an eye out on everything. And what we see that there's a ship that comes bearing a cargo container that comes in and lands kind of at the docks and kind of releases the clamps. And you see the captain kind of looks at it, and he nods and he says, "Hi, well, there it is, boys. It's time to do some loading." And the ship it disconnects, and then it just flies away, leaving this cargo container just kind of sitting on the docks outside of where you guys are docked at.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the captain, stands up and kind of hikes up his belt and begins walking down the gangplank down to where this cargo container is. You see that it's got like these banded seals on it, and he pulls out like a pair of snippers, and he cuts the seals, all 4 of them around the doors, raises up the latch and like opens it up. And as he does, you see that there's 2 individuals actually that are sitting inside of the ship, and you can see they're kind of like disconnecting harnesses. Jackson Kin, you see like they have like a 5-point harness that they were wearing and like a small little bench they were sitting on, and you see them like they pop open, disconnect their harnesses, and as they come out, you can tell like they're sweating. It's 2 humans, 1 male, 1 female, and they're like sweating, and their hair is damp as if they've been like locked in this gigantic hot box for so long. And you hear the man begin to complain. He's like, "Fucking hate this shit." And as like he opens the door, and you see that behind them there are a couple of like very like security crates, right? And the woman next to him says, "Oh, Marks, just calm down. We just need to unload the stuff. Then we're done. We can go get a cool drink. Watch the end of the race." And he just starts complaining and like cursing under his breath. But they open the doors up all the way, and you see they begin to like go in and start moving these security crates out of the container and towards the ship. Ken and Jax, what do you guys do when this whole scene begins to unfold in front of you?
So
I'm gonna
Jax,
help them unload.
Jax would start kind of more actively surveying the area, trying to see if anyone's paying us undue attention, or at the end of the day, he kind of stayed behind more to guard and like ensure that we got the cargo that we're being paid to collect.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
why don't you roll a perception check for me? It's gonna be an average check, but I'm adding a black dice because you don't really know the area or like where the vantage points might actually be.
But I've been to Druckenwell in it. No, it's fine.
Probably not this particular.
Skills, perception.
Your perception's great, right?
Yeah. My on paper, in practice, it's either amazing or abysmal.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So reduce the strain because you're pretty sure no one's watching you.
I am pretty sure of that, aren't I?
Yeah, you're pretty sure no one's observing this encounter at all. So perhaps it relieves your stress a little bit. And I think that like as Kin, as you walk up, the male Marks, he's like, "Oh, thank God, you brought a loading droid this time. Here you go, droid." And he kind of like holds the handle out to you to grab Kin,
Yeah,
so that he doesn't have to do it. And I assume you just like reach down and grab it.
You're not a loading droid, but you can still help. You're all muscle, man.
I'm not a loading, but I am.
It's not a loading droid.
Well, he is now.
So I help.
Yeah, so you help. The woman is on the other side of the crate because it's like a 2-man carry, and she just like rolls her eyes, and like she's the one that helps you load the crate up into the. You walk like up the gangplank, and then there's like a hatch that opens up to load it down into the cargo bay, like with the little lift that loads the crates. And there's 3 of them. There's 3 crates that come loading out, and they're basically I would say they're probably about the size. One of them is probably about the size of a Foot Locker. The other one's probably about the size of like a small dresser, let's say, like a small dresser. And then the other one is probably about the size of like a medium-sized desk.
Mm-hmm.
So they're pretty tall and bulky and big. And I think that Kin, you have the ability to reference weight when you're picking things up, right? Like that's a thing that droids have. They're not heavy, but they appear to be packed very, very delicately. Like when it's kind of the empty milk jug effect a lot. The medium-sized crate is probably the heaviest, when you pick it up. The lights, the smaller one is definitely the lightest, and then the bigger one is probably slightly lighter than the medium-sized crate. And you can tell, like, there's just like a lot of packing material in there to perhaps keep whatever is in there safe. So that's the thing that you guys kind of like load on to the ship. Do you say anything else, Ken, while you're doing all of this?
No, I'll just. I want to get done with this. I'm trying to help speed up the process. Really.
Yeah, and so Mark's the guy. He kind of like gets out. He leans up against the side of the crate, and you see him. He pulls out what we would know to be a death stick, right? And he kind of like holds it up to his lips, and he lights it up. And the captain goes, "Aye, laddie, you know those things will kill you, right?" And Mark just kind of shrugs and like takes a big drag and like, you know, kind of revels in that first hit of the day, right? Jax, what do you do while this is going on? Do you help Kin and the woman load all the crates in, or?
Nope, I'm just gonna stay on guard, keep watching out.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that
like Jack's at the end of the day, like he's been in situations where like there's a deal going down and he has a job to do, and he's just kind of going back into that mode. Like he has a job to do to make sure that like no one sneaks up on the team while they're doing their bit, and he's just gonna kind of he's kind of gone into business mode basically.
Sure, absolutely. So eventually the crates are all loaded, and you see the captain pulls out, like, you can tell it's a credit chip, and just hands it to Marks, and Marks takes it. You see him check it, like check the how much is on it, and he just kind of nods, and he says, "Can't say it was a pleasure, fucking assholes." And then he just like he just slaps the side of the cargo container and then begins to walk off. And the woman kind of the woman actually turns to you, Kin, and she says, "Hey, thank you. Appreciate your help.
My pleasure.
We'll be seeing you around." And she kind of like she kind of like rushes to catch up with Marks, and we see them kind of fade into the midday sun, probably to go to sleep since they were subjected to some nasty business. So the captain kind of like loads the cargo, like closes the cargo container, and you see him pull out these banded seals again, and you see him like he puts them in the same places that he cut the other ones off, and they look almost identical to the ones that he cut off. And then he takes out a small device. It's probably about the size of a quarter, or the largest coin that you have in places that are not the United States. Because I don't know what they're called. I apologize.
2 pound coin, the best coin in the world.
Sure, yeah. And it looks like it's got like a little antenna on it and a little blinking red light, right? And he just attaches and he presses a button and the little red light begins to blink. It looks like you could assume maybe it's a tracking device of some sort. And he comes up and he walks up the gangplank and he says, "Aye, well, that's the business. Now it's just waiting for your friends to come back." And he kind of like checks his watch, right? And probably, not even 5 minutes later, Zian and Mouse and Dash are probably all walking towards the ship. And Dash, immediately you notice the cargo container that is sitting on the docks looks almost identical to the waste containers that you saw coming and going from the volcano top of it.
Well, then, the thing is that they did mention that we're regarding stuff that no one said was either illegal or not, so I guess in a way that however people smuggle their shit, that's their business, but I don't know. I'm not gonna say like, oh, I saw how you did the thing. It's just like, oh, I know how you do your business.
Yep.
Well,
that is what I was implying to you.
Or interesting in a way.
Yeah, that's definitely the implication here. So the three of you continue up the gangplank and get onto the ship, and the captain kind of looks around. He says, "Aye, well, now all we need to do is finish fueling. In the meantime, I'll take a look, make sure we can still run at full speed." And And he kind of descends, and perhaps 10-15 minutes later, like, the ship is done refueling. You can see he's put some panels, like, just kind of bolted some panels over the giant holes from the mandibles in the ship, just so there's not, like, wind drag and there's no shearing or anything like that. And he kind of ascends the gangplank and kind of looks at the group of you and says, "Well, are you ready to go? I'd like to get this over with by the end of tomorrow."
Yeah. I want to get out of here.
Aye, very well. Let us begin then. And the group of you descends into the depths of the ship, and the engines fire up and the cleats are detached, and the ship begins to kind of slide out of the way and then turns and begins its exit from the harbor at Aldemina. So during your travel back, I wanna send it around the table, the digital table we have here, to see if there's any interesting conversations that happen, anything that anyone wants to do. This would be like an opportunity, Dash, like if you wanted to try meditation again.
I actually wanted to for the longest time.
Yeah,
I mean, I was gonna do at the volcano, but then that one interesting piece of business happened.
Yeah, so there's like stuff like that. If there's some things that need to be talked about or anything like that, we can totally address that as well. So
We will
mine's
also do
not
the
that
same.
big.
Sorry.
no, go ahead.
It's fine. It's fine. I was saying if anyone has anything else to do, meditation. I mean, not a big deal.
Yeah.
I'm just saying we would do the same, changing of shift.
Yeah, where there's a couple of you up at all times.
Yeah, and Kin will be up at the bridge and all that.
Right. Yeah, Kin, you're awake the whole time, and then
I think
and then there's
Jax would spend vast majority of his waking hours on deck, but not in the bridge, like clipped on outside. Having gotten quite close to those teeth at the beginning of that encounter, he's kind of very cautious. He wants to make sure that, like, he's kind of looking to make sure we don't bump into anything else again.
Yeah, you're trying to do your best to avoid obstacles.
I think Mouse would want another shooting lesson from Jax
Okay.
to continue that lesson.
Yeah, that's definitely something we can look into.
Maybe while Jax is up on deck, he's like upgrading Mouse a bit, like upgrading the quality of the lessons. So Mouse is out with him, and he's like throwing things out into the ocean, and she, like, at first she's shooting them as they're bobbing as a moving target, and then she starts shooting them like out of the air.
Yeah, like maybe you use your grapple launcher instead of firing your grappling hook. Maybe you shoot, like, maybe you have like a couple of
fruit.
Yeah, something, right, that won't explode when you shoot it. You're like firing them out. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have soda cans, right? That you're firing out of the grappling gun. And it's really hard to shoot from this moving vessel because it's rocketing ahead, right? You're not slowing down at all. So like the wind's kind of whipping you in the face. Definitely very hard. So yeah, we definitely can see that. What about you, Zian?
Well, if Dash was interested in meditation again, then he'll be open to that. He's a little distracted still, so it's probably a little harder to teach it, I guess.
Sure.
That's a black
than
dice.
last time.
Yeah. So maybe let's start there. And again, I think the cargo bay we determined is kind of like the best place for you all to do this.
Yeah.
Because the crew quarters are like very cramped. They're basically just like coffin beds, like all etched into the side of the walls, and there's not a whole lot of room to kind of spread out. So the last time we did this, I made you, Zian, roll a leadership check, which I think is totally accurate here. I'm gonna make it. I don't remember what I made last time, but I think I'm gonna make it hard in this scenario, and I'm also gonna add a black dice just simply because I think your general demeanor right now is probably not very good at instruction.
Yes.
Currently.
And I remove a black dice from leadership checks.
Well, there you go. Perfect.
So
So that's the thing is, like, your head isn't in the game, or I should say your heart isn't in the game, but your head is like, okay, no, we just gotta like we have to do this the right way. So you're able to remove that. Okay, cool. So why don't you roll a leadership check? Cool. Yeah. So take the 2 strain there. Actually, no, don't take the 2 strain.
Okay.
You succeed, which is going to give a blue dice to Dash's roll, but I'm going to use the 2 threat to add a black dice as well. You're a little bit snappy, I think, during your instruction here. So, Dash, for you, it's also going to be a hard check. There's going to be a black dice added, and there's going to be a blue dice added as well because of the success.
I'd make a case for adding 2 blue dice because of my racial ability.
What does your racial ability do?
If I'm aiding another, they get 2 blue dice instead of just 1.
That seems perfectly fair.
Also, you did roll more success than threat.
Yeah, that seems perfectly fair. So 2 blue dice I will add.
I'll also do this.
Yeah, that seems totally fine as well. I'll upgrade it on your side.
The last out of the Force guys.
Yeah, and so for you, this is a discipline check.
Yes, I know. Is it ready?
Yes. Yep, whenever you're ready. Hey. So, reduces strain, and I think that the scene we see here is Dash, before you were unable to kind of like get to the place that Zian keeps describing, right? But I think that the difference here is Zian this time is acting a little bit more like your military instructors. He's a little bit more like curt with you, and I think that's actually helping you in this scenario, right?
Yes.
So you're like going back to like kind of an automated place of thinking, like, oh, my instructor is telling me I need to do this. All right, I'm going to do it. And so it actually, instead of hindering you, as if Zian would have anticipated that, it's actually helping you in the fact that you're able to kind of achieve a bit of a Zen-like demeanor. And I think that the one thing that is the most interesting as you begin to fall into kind of this stupor is the sound of like the waves gently kind of hitting the skiffs, or gently like water kind of splashing up onto the boat. They become the thing that you latch onto. And so I think that like it kind of mesmerizes you and sends you into this deeper form of meditation. And I think that you probably receive a vision. And
okay,
as you're meditating and you're listening to the waves, the water kind of splash up onto the underneath of the boat, you find your mind traveling back through your memories, and it finds a memory that you yourself don't really remember. It's kind of one of those fuzzy things, like, I know there's this thing that happened, but I don't really remember it. And you're back in the academy, and you're in flight school, and you can see all the people around you, and you recognize that they are your classmates, but you don't, like, their faces are blurred out and fuzzy, and you can't really remember their names, or you can't really remember their, like, personalities. You just know that there are others around you, and you yourself are very distinct and clear in this vision. And as you're kind of just dutifully working on whatever you're supposed to be working on, I think that you see bursting through like the classroom door that you're in is, and oh, I should mention as well, RK is the instructor, right?
Okay.
A much younger RK, just like you were much younger at this time. And RK is the instructor, and somebody comes in and bursts through the door. And again, they're kind of like fuzzy, and they kind of, lean down and say some things to RK, and he kind of like nods. And he points at you, Dash, and he says, Dash, you're needed in the hallway. And you kind of like, the class kind of falls silent, right? And they kind of like all look at you like, oh, what's going on with you? And I think that as you stand up and collect your things, you proceed out into the hallway. And there you see an individual who you are certain you have no idea who it is. You've never seen this individual before in your entire life. It is a robed individual in kind of these beige, sandy colored garments. And this robed individual is standing there with but a simple like rope tying around around their waists. And as they gaze up, you can see that they are you know what? They're probably a Miralukan. Okay. And or Miraluka, sorry, there's no N at the end of that. It's probably a Miraluka. So you see that like their eyes are not, their eyes are covered, and this man, he kind of like he looks up and like addresses you, and he actually like he opens his arms wide as in like a welcoming posture, and I think he says to you in a very like kind of deep, and it's kind of like the dream voice, right, where it kind of like reverberates off of weird angles that you didn't know existed inside of the dream, and he says, "Welcome, Ren Creel." And when he says that, the dream vision kind of slips away, and you come back to your eyes snap open, and you're back in the cargo bay of the ship, and you feel this sense of, I wouldn't say that it was a sense of power, but the sense of kind of inner focus that you didn't have before. That you kind of feel it now, that perhaps it's always been there, you just didn't know it. And you wake up, and you I think that you definitely feel as though something has changed within you, something has altered. For you, Zian, I think that perhaps you recognize immediately what is going on here. A change comes over Dash as you understand him, and you sense there is, as the flowers blossom, you sense that kind of feeling coming from Dash, and I think you can tell there's the faintest trickle of the force that kind of for just the briefest of moments comes from Dash. It's very, very faint, but it is there. And I think that like Dash like opens his eyes and kind of like looks at you, and I don't know like if you're confused at all, Dash, if you're emboldened by this experience, or what may happen.
Mostly confused. Somewhat emboldened by the power, but confused as to what just happened. Like, it's surreal in a way to relive a memory and just have it, and I guess he wouldn't know what a vision is, like what happened, like is it a vision? He's kind of just like, basically the whole experience is surreal to him.
Yeah.